Okay. 6.13.14. Samam kaya shiro grivam dharayanna chalam stiraha sampreksha nasikagram swam dishas chanavalokayan prashantatma vigatabhir brahmachari vrate stitaha manas samyamya machito yukta asita matparaha. One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an agitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Okay. The goal of life is to know Krishna, who is situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the four-handed Vishnu form. So if anybody had any lack of clarity about what the goal of our life needs to be, it's pretty clear. That it goal of life is to know Krishna. So in the fourth chapter we read Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam Evam Yo Vetti Tattvataha. So Krishna is transcendental, Divya. So one who knows him in truth will not come back to this material world. So why? Because once we know him, first is we'll get supremely attracted by Krishna. So we will not be able to live without him. So we will want to be wherever he is and serve him with all our hearts. Yeah, so we have to know Krishna as he is, and we cannot understand Krishna as he is unless we hear from authorities, from acharyas in disciplic succession. Many people say that they're devotees of Krishna, but they don't really understand Krishna. Because understanding Krishna is not very easy. Krishna is very complex. Complex for those who are not his devotees. But for devotees, it's very easy to understand Krishna. So our goal is to understand Krishna, know Krishna, understand Krishna. For which we have to, this can be achieved only by Shravanam, by reading, hearing about Krishna from authorities. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. When we read all these scriptures, only then we can understand Krishna. And of course, then there is Nectar of Devotion, which is a superlative book, which describes a lot of details about devotion. We will come to that after we finish. At least after first two cantos of Bhagavatam, we will do Nectar of Devotion. The amazing book. Okay, the yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu and not for any other purpose. So this is the Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, which is being described in this chapter. The goal of this Ashtanga Yoga is to discover and see Paramatma, who is localized form of Vishnu sitting in everybody's heart. The localized Vishnu Murti is the plenary representation of Krishna dwelling within one's heart. One who has no program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice and is certainly wasting his time. Those who are engaging in asana pranayama yoga. Asana pranayama yoga. Actually, there are 9 stages, but mostly what normal yoga classes teach is asana pranayama. Prabhupada is saying wasting time because they're not going to realize Krishna. Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and the Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart is the object of yoga practice. To realize this Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. Therefore, one has to leave home and live alone in a secluded place, remaining seated as mentioned above. mentioned above means with one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Now, this posture of sitting with head, neck, and head erect in a straight line is pretty useful when we are chanting. So, like I said, some of these aspects can also be applied in our bhakti process also. So we can, if we sit erect like this, actually it helps us to concentrate. Otherwise, if we couch, then we'll just become it's mode of ignorance, and we might just our mind might get distracted here and there. Okay, so one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. Now, this is very important. I mean, I think for various reasons. So, okay, I'm going to, while it's not something that is very commonly talked about in Indian culture, but it's very important. So, we need to understand this. So, the whole idea of marriage is, like Krishna says, is to actually beget Krishna conscious progeny, for which the basis is Garbhadhana Samskar. And in this whole Garbhadhana Samskar, first, obviously, there is no question of engaging in, engaging for sense gratification, right? So nowadays, it's basically cats and dogs civilization. So marriage is just seen as a somewhat like a channel for sense gratification, and husband and wife engage unrestrictedly in sex life, which is absolutely not what is expected. And also many times for people are married for many years and without having any children. Now, of course, unless there is some medical reason, etc. This basically means that they want to just enjoy the pleasure of sex life without actually producing children, which means obviously the use of contraceptives. And this is not at all approved by Shastra. So this whole process of sense gratification is almost on the verge of breaking one of the regulative principles. So this is a very important thing. So one has to, and it's very clear one has to engage at the, so previously how this used to be like an event, almost like, if a husband and wife are coming together for procreation, then first is there is muhurta, then it is known to, because muhurta means obviously some astrologer is consulted, and it's known that this husband and wife, etc. So there is nothing like indiscriminate enjoyment, right? Like, so it's known this date, this time, etc. Because that is the time given for procreation, for getting a very good progeny. So, and both the boy and the girl, they prepare themselves by in Garbhadhana Samskara by chanting Hare Krishna at least minimum 64 rounds, so that the consciousness is built to not for sense enjoyment, but to get Krishna conscious children. Now, even if somebody is, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, saying that for you can produce hundreds of Krishna conscious children if you want, right? So there is no question of family planning as such. Family planning is when you don't want children, automatic family planning, which means that no engagement in sex life, and like I said, no question of using contraceptives, etc. So this is complete abstinence actually. This is brahmacharya. So when one engages only for procreation, it is actually brahmacharya, because the whole consciousness is to serve Krishna. Now, obviously, if somebody is not living a life like this, then they have to leave home and live in a secluded place, etc. Because otherwise, they will just get too attracted to this whole activity, and their mind will be disturbed, etc., etc. Prabhupada writes elsewhere saying that materialists are not motivated to do their work um, without the motivation they get from sexual engagement. So, and then he says, of course, for devotees, there's no question, right? They're always motivated to serve Krishna. So this whole, so Prabhupada will write a lot about this in this purport. So one who cannot, this is complete abstinence. Complete abstinence doesn't necessarily mean that one completely does not contact his spouse at all, but only for the purpose of creating Krishna conscious children. One cannot enjoy sex life daily at home or elsewhere and attend a so-called yoga class and thus become a yogi. I mean, this is so direct. Prabhupada is saying daily at home or elsewhere. I mean, this is what the modern civilization, animal civilization is. They're saying, you cannot just do like this and attend a so-called yoga class, because that yoga class is not going to, yoga means connection with Supreme. That is not going to give us any kind of connection with Supreme, because this is animalistic. You can't engage in animalistic tendencies and then try to connect with Krishna. That's not possible. One has to practice controlling the mind and avoiding all kinds of sense gratification, of which sex life is the chief. So this is the binding force of this material world. Maituna Graha. This place is called Maituna Agraha. It's a jail based on sex life. So in the rules of celibacy written by great sage Yagnavalkya, it is said, Karmana manasa vacha sarvavastasu sarvada sarvatra maithuna tyago brahmacharyam prachakshate. The vow of brahmacharya is meant to help one completely abstain from sex indulgence in work, words, and mind at all times, under all circumstances, and in all places. So it's so austere. No one can perform correct yoga practice through sex indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught therefore from childhood, when one has no knowledge of sex life. Children at the age of 5 are sent to Gurukula, or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga, whether it be dhyana, jnana, or bhakti. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having sexual relationship only with his wife, and that also under regulation, like I said, is also called a brahmachari. Such a restrained householder brahmachari may be accepted in the bhakti school, but the jnana and dhyana schools do not even admit householder brahmacharis. So which means for jnana and dhyana, one has to be really only brahmachari. No married people are allowed. But bhakti accepts such restrained householder brahmachari, not unrestrained householders. So if one is unrestrained householder, then he should not take initiation. They require complete abstinence without compromise. The Gnana and Dhyana schools, they require complete abstinence. So they don't take grasthas at all. In the Bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed controlled sex life, because the cult of Bhakti Yoga is so powerful that one automatically loses sexual interaction, being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. So this is very important. One who engages in the superior service of the Lord, to him automatically he loses sexual attraction. But if he has not lost it, that means that he is not engaged properly, right? Or his previous vasanas, his last, previous life desires, etc., were not very right, and so there are a lot of anarthas within his heart which have to go, which means that for some people it might take slightly longer than normal. But just engaging in devotional service will clean our hearts. Bhagavad Gita 2.59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjan rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of superior taste. So one has to experience this superior taste of bhakti. So if we have not experienced superior taste, then we cannot artificially bhakti doesn't involve artificial control. To some extent, smaller things there is, but as we engage in devotional service, automatically is like, what does automatically mean? When you put on a switch, automatically the light comes up. Nothing else needs to be done, right? So when one engages in bhakti and experience higher taste, superior taste, automatically these things come under control. Other than the devotee, no one has any information of that superior taste. So it's all about this rasava, param drustva, this superior taste, supreme taste of Krishna consciousness. Without that, there is no hope. The great yogis have fallen because of being attracted by women. So it's not, and it's not that it's applicable only for men; it's applicable for women as well. But yeah, more looks like at least the Shastra speaks more openly about men, obviously because of obvious reasons. Vikita P, one cannot be fearless unless one is fully in Krishna consciousness. So if anybody has any fear, that means that they are not fully in Krishna consciousness. A conditioned soul is fearful due to his perverted memory. Perverted memory means his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. This is perverted memory. And the Bhagavatam says, Bhayam dityapi neveshata syat ishad apetasya viparyayos smritihi. Krishna consciousness is the only basis for fearlessness. Therefore, perfect practice is possible for a person who is Krishna conscious. And since the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to see the Lord within, a Krishna conscious person is already the best of all yogis. The principles of yoga system mentioned herein are different from those of the popular so-called yoga societies. So, very important that for progress in bhakti as well, our mind also should be in this state. It's not that this is only for a dhyana yogi. So here, instead of meditating upon me, we'll say one should chant Krishna's names, right? That the process is different, but the state of mind has to be the same. It has to be unagitated. Little more, I'm elaborating on this. Unagitated, one is because of sex life, but even otherwise, due to material things, one's mind should not be agitated with material things. Mind should be subdued. This is very important. See, mind is now free, like, like a brat, they say, right? Like it's misbehaving and it doesn't have anybody to subdue it. So the mind has to be subdued. For devotees in Krishna consciousness, mind automatically becomes subdued when we engage in devotional service. But in other processes, they have to artificially impose constraints, and which is why sometimes, many times people following other process, they don't succeed. For us, unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, everything completely free from sex life, all this will happen simply in engaging in Krishna consciousness and experiencing higher taste. So what one should be really looking for is, if they are not experiencing higher taste, then there is a big problem. Now, what is this higher taste? Higher taste could be experienced in through any of the angas of bhakti. One could be looking at the Lord and experiencing higher taste. One could be hearing kirtan and experiencing higher taste. One could be chanting, doing kirtan, experiencing a higher taste. Reading philosophy, experiencing a higher taste. Doing japa, experiencing a higher taste. Hearing class, experiencing a higher taste. Cooking prasad bhoga, experiencing a higher taste. Honoring prasadam, experiencing a higher taste. So it could be any of these. But one has to experience a higher taste. So this is very, very important. Otherwise, there is something very drastically, we are missing something, and it requires very close introspection, because without that, we will get stuck with material desires. Because see, we have to understand, senses require actual engagement. Senses require gratification also, but we don't want to give it material gratification. That gratification automatically happens when a person engages in bhakti and the senses are satisfied. They are satisfied. They don't need to further engage in material stuff. Right. So for which we have to experience higher taste. So it's very, very important. And higher taste obviously has direct connection with the type of association we have. If we associate with devotees who have a higher taste, then we will also experience higher taste. So simple, right? So this is very important practical verse. Any questions from anybody? Okay. Yeah. 6.15. Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasah shantim nirvana paramam mat samstham adhigacchati. Thus practicing constant control of the body, mind and activities. The mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God by cessation of material existence. So this is a yogi. So for a yogi, practicing constant control of the body, mind and activities. So pranayama, yama, niyama, pranayama. Yama, niyama, rules, do's and don'ts. Pranayama, breathing process, which by the breathing process, the mind is controlled. So, and all other activities that the yogi is engaged in, his mind regulated. So the all activities are to regulate the mind. Once he regulates the mind, then he can concentrate on the Vishnumurti in the heart, and then he attains to the kingdom of God. Now he can attain to the kingdom of God, or a yogi can attain any planet he wants to achieve. If he is interested in some other material planet, that also he can achieve. Okay, but if he is intended on achieving kingdom of God, that also he can achieve. Okay, purpose. The ultimate goal in practicing yoga is now clearly explained. The yoga practice is now not meant for attaining any kind of material facility. It is to enable the cessation of all material existence. So while the whole world is running behind enhancing the material existence, yoga, whether bhakti yoga, gnana yoga, karma yoga, whatever yoga, all yogas are targeted at cessation of material existence, stopping material existence. So we don't want to increase our material attachment, our material possessions. It all has to decrease. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi. Haha. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi, according to Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada is saying this mainly because yoga, now people are doing yoga for improving health. Nor does cessation of material existence entail one's entering into the void, which is only a myth. This is for impersonalists or those people who believe that everything is void, zero. We enter into zero. So Prabhupada is saying, no, we don't enter into zero. There is no void anywhere within the creation of the world. Rather, the cessation of material existence enables one to enter into the spiritual sky, the word of the Lord. So there's one example which is given of a green parrot entering a green tree. Now, a green parrot, if it enters a green tree, doesn't mean that the parrot became one with the tree because both of them are green. And just because we are not able to see the parrot visibly, doesn't mean that it is merged into the tree. The green parrot is living in the green tree and it is engaging in its activities and it's whatever, right? It's not didn't lose its existence. So similarly, when we say we are entering into the spiritual sky, we are not entering to become zero, right? We are not entering to become zero. So we are entering to serve the Lord. Okay. The abode of the Lord is also clearly described in the Bhagavad Gita as that place where there is no need of sun, moon, or electricity. Natad bhaseto suryo na shashanko na pavakaha. All the planets in the spiritual kingdom are self-illuminated like the sun in the material sky. So in the material sky, only sun is self-illuminated. But in the spiritual kingdom, all planets are self-illuminated. The kingdom of God is everywhere, but the spiritual sky and the planets thereof are called Param Dhama, superior abodes. Kingdom of God is everywhere, meaning even the material world is Lord's kingdom. But the spiritual sky is called Param Dhama and the planets thereof. A consummate yogi who is perfect in understanding Lord Krishna, as is clearly stated herein by Lord Krishna, Mat Chitta, Mat Para, Mat Sthanam, can attain real peace and can ultimately reach his supreme abode, Krishna Loka, known as Goloka Vrindavana. Let me just look up dictionary meaning of consummate. Complete. Okay. Accomplished. Okay. So an accomplished yogi who is perfect in understanding Lord Krishna, as is clearly stated here by the Lord himself. Mat Chitta. Think of me. Mat Para. Is Mat Para here? Nirvana. Mat Paramam. Okay. So the Mat Samstham is spiritual sky. Mat Para is spiritual existence, I think. Mat Para, Mat Sthanam. Mat Sthanam is spiritual abode. Can attain real peace and can ultimately reach his supreme abode. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated, Goloka eva nivasatya kila atmabhuto. The Lord, although residing always in his abode called Goloka, he is the all-pervading Brahman and the localized Paramatma as well by dint of his superior spiritual energies. No one can reach the spiritual sky or enter into the Lord's eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, without proper understanding of Krishna and his plenary power expansion, Vishnu. So all this we have to understand. Who is Krishna? Who is Vishnu? All these relations we have to understand very clearly. Otherwise, we can't enter Goloka. Therefore, a person working in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi because his mind is always absorbed in Krishna's activities. Savaimana Krishna Padhara Vindayo. This is Ambarish Maharaj. In the Vedas also, we learn Tam eva viditvati mrityumeti. One can overcome the path of birth and death only by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. In other words, perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of freedom from material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to befool innocent people. So by yoga, one can stop his material existence and attain the kingdom of God. Okay, any questions from anybody? Okay, 6.16. Natyashnatastu yogosti na chaikantam anashnataha na chati swapnashilasya jagrato naiva charjuna. Okay, this is very, very important. There's no possibility of once becoming a yogi or Arjuna if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Regulation of diet and sleep is recommended herein for the yogis. Now this is applicable for bhaktas also. Too much eating means eating more than is required to keep the body and soul together. Now this is something which is grossly misunderstood. I see this. Generally, everybody thinks that the more one is able to eat, better, right? So, okay, you have very good appetite. No, mostly more than appetite, people are eating more than required. That is the important part. And if you study Ayurveda talks about eating only at least 30% or half stomach has to be solid, 25% should be liquid, and 25% should be air, which means that technically we should only eat half of the stomach with solid food. But and why do people develop like stomach and protruded bellies and all that? Because they're expanding the stomach. The stomach can expand. So if you eat more than what you need, the stomach will expand. Then you will eat more. Then again the stomach will expand. If stomach expanding basically means that you're eating more than required. So this is very important, and in fact, like, you know, we have to control this eating. I mean, in initially for devotees, it is said that you can eat as much prasadam as required. That is because there are no other ways to gratify like tongue, and tongue is very dangerous. So if it is too much of restriction is imposed on the tongue, then it will end up in possibly eating non-prasadam. So is that you eat how much ever prasadam you want. But as we make progress, we should absolutely eat only as much as required, because that also becomes like sense gratification. We want to offer food to Krishna which we like. That is okay in the initial stages, but not later. So we have to impose control over this. And again, by the process of chanting and becoming conscious about this, we should make sure that we only eat as much as required to keep body and soul together. In fact, if we only eat as much as required, our health will also be better than normal, because there are a lot of issues that are caused just by bad lifestyle. Prabhupada talks about this in the first canto of Bhagavatam. There is no need for men to eat animals because there is an ample supply of grains, vegetables, fruits, and milk. Such simple foodstuff is considered to be in the mode of goodness according to Bhagavad Gita. So we discuss this later. Animal food is for those in the mode of ignorance. Therefore, those who indulge in animal food, drinking, smoking, and eating food which is not first offered to Krishna will suffer sinful reactions because of eating only polluted things. Bhunjate te tvagam papam e pachantyatma karanat. Anyone who eats for sense pleasure or cooks for himself, not offering his food to Krishna, is only sin. So those who are not offering all their food to Krishna, who are not eating only Krishna prasadam, please note very, very clear, you're eating only sin. Why would you want to be so excited about eating sin? Because eating sin means suffering, future suffering. One who eats sin and eats more than is allotted to him cannot execute perfect yoga. It is best that one eat only the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna. A person in Krishna consciousness does not eat anything which is not offered first to Krishna. Therefore, only the Krishna conscious person can attain perfection in yoga practice. Nor can one who artificially abstains from eating, manufacturing his own personal process of fasting, practice yoga. So this also is not good. Some people do excessive austerities, such an extent that body becomes so weak that they cannot engage in bhakti. No, that is also not recommended. Said eat as much as is required. Okay, and then of course we have, with every Ekadashi we have to do some austerity. One is, we obviously abstain from grains, but beyond that also, we even on Ekadashis we have to slowly reduce consumption, at least every Ekadashi or every alternate Ekadashi as we can manage. Yeah, and of course, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about Nirjal. Nirjal is not required unless one is very strong. But even Nirjal, continuous Nirjal also spoils. I mean, it hurts the body. So it's not recommended all the time, because that we won't know immediately. We'll know later as years progress. It's okay to do only water. You can sip water, little bit water, and maybe you don't eat. I mean, and yeah, those who cannot practice that much austerity, it's okay. They can take, some simple prasada, but not unnecessarily excessively fasting and eating less than required. That one should avoid, and one should know how much is required for his or her body. A Krishna conscious person observes. Okay, just one thing on that. So either if you eat too less or you eat too much, it reflects in the energy level of the body. Either one is too sleepy if he's eating too much, or one is very tired if he's eating too less, right? So either way, you can detect whether you're eating enough or more. A Krishna conscious person observes fasting as it is recommended in the scriptures. He does not fast or eat more than is required, and is thus competent to perform yoga practice. So Prabhupada is assuming that everybody should follow this. One who eats more than required will dream very much while sleeping, and he must consequently sleep more than is required. One should not sleep more than 6 hours daily. This is absolutely true for those in complete healthy state of body, and youngsters, and even not just youngsters. Youngsters, absolutely 6 hours is enough. Even as we age, if you are in a healthy condition, 6 hours, 6.5 hours is more than enough. One who sleeps more than 6 hours out of 24 hours is certainly influenced by mode of ignorance. Again, now this depends on body needs, but we should not artificially, say no, my body requires 7 hours. How do we know sleep is enough or not? If sleep is less, then we'll get tired, right? Body is not getting required rest. It's also an indication that we are. And if we require like 8 hours, then we have really some problem, medical problem. We have to go and visit a doctor, because we won't need so much sleep. A person in the mode of ignorance is lazy and prone to sleep a great deal. Such a person cannot perform yoga. So please not eat as much as is required, sleep as much as is required, and not more, because it will increase mode of ignorance. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, today has been like an extraordinarily silent session. Okay, so we'll close here. It's already 9:10. Anything else from anybody?